Welcome, Dallas educators, to part 2 of Assessment Admin in SchoolNet. Today on the SchoolNet training site, I'm going to show you how to schedule and administer a test, how to use the Proctor dashboard and track completion rates to score assessment questions as needed. Just like I did in part 1, during this webinar, I'll be presenting the content from a high level via the PowerPoint, and then I will go live on the Dallas training site. At any time, you can pause the recording and try activities out on your own, and then you can restart the recording when you are ready to move on. So my learning goals for you today are to know how to schedule and administer an assessment, how to monitor that administration, and then also how to score open response items. Just as a reminder, you can find helpful resources within SchoolNet to support any types of work you're going to be doing. We've loaded a variety of materials into PD Planner resources, and at the end of the session, I'll show you where you can get those. We have quick reference cards, we have some end-user PowerPoint presentations, and anywhere you see a little orange question bubble throughout the tool, you can access on-screen help. If you want to know the system requirements, you can also find that out at the footer of any screen when you're within the system. So as a reminder, I'm going to kind of briefly review what we went over in the first session where we learned how to create items and create tests. And then I'm going to access a test that we did create. So you want to use Assessment Admin to build tests and monitor the collection of results. The data from those assessments can be accessed through the Classrooms module or the School and District Data module. We will show you in part 3 of the webinar how to look at those reports in the Classrooms module. But we're going to focus parts 1 and 2 on the creation within Assessment Admin. So the test administration overview requires basically 5 steps. The first step is where you're going to create the tests and the test score keys and any associated resources to help support the assessment building. And then in the second step, that's when you're going to print answer sheets, maybe test booklets, print out student usernames, and then you're going to administer the test. Depending on the way you administer the test, you can either scan in your results or you can collect them online. And then the last part is when you have the ability to analyze the data, and this will be all available online. It is also almost instantaneous as you are either administering it or scanning the results. As I mentioned in the past, really step 1 is the heavy lift. That's where you're going to spend the time creating items and creating tests, which is what we did in part 1. But let's just review what that process was. You can create a test 2 ways. You can create an express test or a manual test. Either one you'll select and you'll just say Start Now. Once you create that, you'll have to put in kind of required fields for the test properties, which include giving it a name and a subject and a grade range and so on and so forth. And then once you're put into the test detail itself, you'll then start adding in your items. You have the ability to add items from the item bank, or you can create items within your assessment. You can also search for items that you've created on your own. The other way to create an assessment is the express test method. This is kind of the fastest way to create an assessment because what you do is you still put in your test properties, but you're going to select standards that you want to include. And then the system will tell you whether or not there are any standards that are aligned to any items that are aligned to that standard. And then you can choose how many items you want to include on your assessment. It's a really, as I said, fast and easy way to pinpoint those standards that you're working on within your classroom. Once you've put in your items, you'll then build your express test, and you'll basically be ready to go. And that is pretty much where we left off in part 1. So now I'm going to talk about how do you access that test and how do you schedule it. So there's a couple ways where you can find your tests as a teacher. You can go to the test dashboard and you can see any tests that you have created, or really kind of the fastest way is also to search for a test if you recall the name. And you can also search for the different stages that a test is in. So let's talk about test stages. Depending on the assessment you created in part 1, you would have had your test in private draft. Some users, depending on the category of test that you're creating, if you created a common assessment, which means you could share it with other teachers in your school, you may have moved it into the public draft stage. But anytime a test is in draft stage is when you have the ability to edit them. If you are just creating a classroom test by yourself and not wanting anyone else to use it, then you most likely won't see the public draft stage. So when I go live on the site, I'll show you where you could change that category. So once you are sure that your test is ready to schedule and be administered, you'll then select this next stage, which is ready to schedule. You'll be prompted to make sure that if everything is good to go, because you will not be able to make any changes. And then when you are actually ready to schedule the test, you'll then move into the scheduled stage. And this means that the test is actually assigned to students. You have a start and an end date, but the test itself has not reached the start date. So the next stage is what we call in progress, which is when the test will automatically switch to that stage when the start date is reached. So an assessment will stay in an in-progress stage between the start and end date, or it will automatically switch to the next stage, which is complete, when the end date hits or when the number of results exceeds a certain percentage of eligible test takers. So if you have 100 students taking an assessment, as soon as 85 students take the test, it will switch to complete even before the end date. So that's the last stage, is complete, which is what I just said, when the current time, the current end date is hit or the percentage is hit. So let's talk about what we see in the test actions and properties, and then I'll review this as well when we go live. There's a couple of sections that we'll point out, but when we are actually moving our tests through the draft and ready to schedule stages, some of these menus could change. So the first section is called our test actions. This gives us the ability to copy our test, delete our test, preview it, and we can also see what's available for us to print. Copy test is a great feature because it allows me to maybe create a pre-assessment and then a post-assessment, and I can use the exact same questions. So then the next section we're interested in is what we call test properties. This is where you have the ability to actually edit different areas of the test properties. When we create an assessment, the first step in creating is we add in these test properties. This is where we put the grade range, the subject, our preferred standards document. Do we enable tools and manipulatives for the whole assessment? Variety of things that we can choose when we're creating it. Once we do click Generate Test, we also have the ability to edit some of these. So maybe you've decided that it's for your 8th grade class and not your 7th grade class. So you could feasibly go in and edit those properties and change the grade range. You also can enable and disable any printing capabilities. So if you don't want a student test booklet in a Word document, you can uncheck this. So all of these fall into the test properties where you'll see the same fields when creating the assessment. The last section is what we call customized tests. This is where you can delete multiple questions. So if you happen to put in some extra questions that you don't want to delete manually, like clicking on each item and saying delete, you can put a checkbox in front of those items and delete more than one at the same time. It makes it a lot faster. Remember I mentioned about pre-test and a pre-assessment and a post-assessment, or a pre-test, post-test? If you copy your assessment and want to make it a post-test, maybe you want to reorder the questions so they're not in the same order. So this is a two-step process. You can reorder the questions so you can make the last question the first question or vice versa. But once you reorder, you will also have to change the question numbers. So it is a two-step process, and I'll demonstrate that. You also have the ability to change score groups. When you select this, you'll have to override what the current system default is. The system default has these cut scores that will put down what the score groups are. So if a student received a 70, and between a 70 and a 55, he or she will have a score group of needs improvement. If you want to change these cut scores, you'd have to click in this checkbox. And then we also have the option to change answer choice patterns. So maybe questions 1, 3, and 5 are A, B, C, D, and then 2, 4, 6 are E, F, G, H. So if you want to change the answer choice patterns, you can do that. Be aware that anything that is required when setting things up has an asterisk next to it. So all of these are just additional actions or properties that you can work with. So at this point, I'm going to locate my test that I created in the first part, in part one of our webinar series. And I'm going to review the property details. I'm going to talk about modifying the score group and item numbering and deleting. And then I'm going to talk about a very important feature, which is previewing your assessment online. And then we're going to move it into the ready to schedule stage. So I'm going to log in as a teacher on my training site. And I'm going to go to Assessment Admin, and I can click right on Dashboard here. Now from here, I can look at any tests that I've been working on. I can see the different stages. I can also scroll down and see if I have any other assessments in progress or available. I can see any scheduled tests that would show up here, and so on. So the test I'm going to be working with is this test. So I'm just going to click on the test name. Now again, this was a test that I created in the Part 1 series webinar. So it is a common classroom assessment, which means I can share this with other teachers in my school and grade, and that's why I have this test stage of private and public. I could feasibly move my test into the public draft, and therefore other teachers at my school will be able to see it and could feasibly edit it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now and then see what shows up. So my next stage after these draft stages are my ready to schedule. As you can see, I have a warning up above that I have a couple of errors, and also my ready to schedule button is not blue, which means I cannot do anything until I've corrected these errors. So it tells me 2, 3, and 11 are what needs to be resolved. I'm going to scroll down, and I can see number 2 right here. Looks okay to me, but oh, I didn't align it to a standard. So I could feasibly go in here in my actions and choose edit, and then assign it, make sure I know what the content is, and then make sure I assign a standard to it. I'm just going to click any one and choose done. And then I will return to my test detail. And now let's see if I still have the warnings. And yep, I still have 2 different items that are contain errors. So I can scroll down and I can see item 3 has some issues. So it doesn't even have any content. So maybe it was just a placeholder. So from here, I can go ahead in the actions and choose delete. And now I only have my last item that has some issues in it too. Again, no content. So I could feasibly click on actions and say delete. But I'm going to remove that when I go into customize tests to show you how to remove some other items. So I'm going to look at my copy test, where I could feasibly click right here. I can copy my test. It's going to put the number copy at the end. So maybe I want to call this my post assessment. Now, you want to be sure that you copy the test when it's ready to go, because if I'm copying it right now, any errors that I have will also be on that copy. So but you have the ability to copy the test at any time. You also have the ability to delete this test up until the point that you have student results. Once you have student results, you will not have this option to delete. I'm going to preview in just a second. Now I want to talk about the different materials available to print. So I can choose my original properties were to print the student test booklet in a Word document and the answer key in PDF. And we're going to go down into the test properties and change that. Schedule information will mean nothing at this point because we haven't scheduled, but we'll show it in a little bit. And now associated resources will be the ability to add an additional resource. So maybe you want the teachers, the students to have a handout so the teacher can attach the resource right there. So now let's talk about all the test properties. As you can see, all of these came from when we created the assessment on that first page to create. My test category is here, my grade range, my subject, my preferred standards document, and any changes that I made to the item settings. I enabled tools and manipulators for the whole test instead of just the items. I didn't enable any comments, and now I'm enabling printing, and I only checked 2. So let's go ahead and edit the properties here. Now, everything can be edited. The only thing that cannot be changed is the name of your test. But we already know that if you wanted to rename your test, you could click on Test Actions and copy it. So if I wanted to change my assessment back to my classroom, the public draft would disappear, but it would still give me the ability to make edits. I just wouldn't be able to share this with other teachers. So let's go down and actually make some changes to the printable document. So I do want it in PDF. I want scoring instructions, and I want the test rubric, and I want a cover sheet. So now I'm going to choose Save. So again, these are all personal preference, things that you've set up. So as you can see now, it did change my access to getting a student test booklet in PDF and Word, and now I also have a cover sheet. If I did have any rubrics in this test, then it would have given me the option to print those rubrics. So all I did was when I was in Test Properties, I went down to the Edit Properties section, and I was able to make my changes. So now let's talk about Customize Tests. In Customize, these options, if I can get up there, will allow me to delete multiple questions. So as I mentioned, I could easily go into Actions and view, delete, remove, replace, edit, but I can do that one at a time, or I can delete more than one, which is if you have a lot of items that you want to remove, you can just click on the checkbox, and I know I have an edit down below. I'm going to click these last 2. So instead of me clicking on the actions for every single one, I'm able to delete 3 items in really, a quick click. Just click in front of the checkbox and then press delete. Now, as you can see, that warning I had on top is gone, and now my Ready to Schedule button is blue, which means I can move it into the next stage. I'm going to finish the customized test. So we talked about reorder questions in the PowerPoint. This is a two-step process. So I'm going to reorder it. And let's say I want to put this question to be my first question and this question to be my second question. So I'm changing the numbers, and then I'm going to choose Save Reorder. Now what you're going to see is my numbers are now changed. It really just moved the placeholder where the placeholder was. So now it jumps from 1, 3 to 4. So I'm going to have to now do my question numbers to reorder them basically, so that we start with number 1 and it will correct any reordering we did. So we will apply that and then we'll save it. So as I mentioned, if you want to reorder your questions, you will have to also change your question numbers. So score groups, again, these score groups are a default of the system. So when I click on Override, I'm going to have the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to do needs improvement at 60. So for this particular test, a student, if they receive between an 85 and a 60, it's considered satisfactory, but it's just for this test. We cannot change the names or the colors of the score group, but we can override the default scores. I'm going to just choose Close on that. And then the last is the answer choice patterns. And this is where you have the ability to change the labelings however you wish. And I'm going to go ahead and close on that. So now I think I'm ready to go to my Ready to Schedule. So I'm going to click on my Ready to Schedule stage. And I'm going to be prompted with, are you ready to schedule the test? You will no longer be able to make changes to the test you want to proceed. Well, if I am 100% sure that I'm ready to administer this test, then I'll say okay. However, I just realized I forgot to do something, so I am going to say cancel. And at any point, you can cancel your Ready to Schedule until you click OK. And the last and most important thing you'll want to do is preview your test online. So I'm going to preview my test online, and this is going to show you exactly what the students will see when they're taking the assessment online. From here, we assigned math tools to the test itself. So these manipulatives are going to show for every question, regardless of whether or not they're going to be needed. So there's my basic calculator, there's my inch ruler, I can clear it, and now I'm going to choose Next, just verify the question and make sure everything is viewable. And once I'm done, I can then exit out and make any changes that need to be changed. So this preview online test is really very important. So I've done everything, and now I can say Ready to Schedule, and I'm going to choose OK, because I know it's good to go. And what you're going to see is I'm going to lose some ability to make some changes. Let's see if I can make any changes to the test properties. So as you can see, you do have the ability to edit the test properties because this has no impact on the items themselves. Can I delete any items? Nope. The only thing I can really do is view and maybe modify a few properties of it. What about customize? The only thing that I'm able to customize is score groups. So just know that when you move from draft stage into Ready to Schedule, you're going to lose you're going to lose all of your editing abilities from within the test. So at this time, you can pause the recording and explore all the actions and properties of the test. And then when you are ready, you can move your test into the Ready to Schedule stage and then just return to the recording when you're ready to continue. Now that your test is in the Ready stage, we're going to go into the Schedule stage. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint to give you kind of the high-level overview. and we're going to talk about scheduled dates. So as soon as you click on your blue button that says schedule, you're going to be brought to the screen that has you enter in start date, end date, and score due date. As soon as you put in that date for the start date, the end date will automatically default to 7 days later. And when you click on the end date, and if you make any changes to that date, your score due date will automatically be 7 days later than that. So you want to keep in mind when you put in these dates to give time for any makeup. Just think about how many computers might be available and scanning and things like that. Now, the score due date is really for informational purposes, and it's to help you know when you need to get your open response items scored. If your test doesn't have any open response items, then the score due date really doesn't have an impact to you. What we say is the testing window is really between the start and end date. Now, there's going to be lots of other options that we can look at that we'll choose from. The system has some defaults, so you can either deselect or select other ones if you like. When you are administering your assessment online, you can choose to administer it through the browser test tunnel or the secure tester. Throughout Dallas, we are not using the secure tester, but if you accidentally select that, what is required is the specific software loaded on every machine of the students that are taking the assessment. If you select that, it will prevent the students from taking the test online. So I suggest you keep the default on that. The online passcode is an auto-generated alphanumeric number, and it must be unique for each test, but it can be changed. So for my elementary or, lower middle, if you want to keep it simple, you can change it to the teacher's name with a number at the end for each assessment. Just know that it has to be unique for each test. Now, the options down below, again, are going to be, some are going to be checked for system default, where you can determine if you want students to see their scores upon their completing their assessment and submitting it. If you have a lot of open response items in the test, you will definitely want to uncheck that because open response items show as incorrect. So the students will see a very low score if you obviously haven't scored those items. You can, you can display the test on the student's home page. You can prevent students from accessing the test before the start or end date. Enforcing test times is a great option, especially in high school where teachers have multiple sections of a course or subject, because they will have the ability to, students will have the ability to tell a friend what the test passcode is. And if they have a free period, that friend could go in and feasibly take the test. So we have the ability to enforce the test during, maybe one time every day, or you could go in, you as a teacher could go in and change the online passcode for each different period that you have. You can have a time test. You can track and display student response times. So if you have a lot of open response, you may want to see how long it's taking students to respond. We have the ability to scramble question orders, scramble your answer choices. You can have students pause the test, especially if you have a time test. And then the last is allow only assigned students to take the test. Again, if you teach multiple subjects, especially in high school, multiple courses in the same subject, and students know what their username and password is, they could give this passcode to any student. And if this is not checked, any student could feasibly take the assessment. So again, these are all options. Nothing is required for you to use except for the test passcode. You can deselect or select any of these based on your own preference. Now the last, and it really should be a required field, is you have to assign the test to your students. This is a common step that teachers forget. because they assume I'm creating a test for math and I'm a math teacher, so it's just going to automatically assign it. You have to actually select one of these options. So since I'm, in this example, on the live side, I created a math test for 7th grade. So when I go in to schedule it, because I created a math test for 7th grade and I teach 7th grade, it's going to say, do you want to accept the quick assignment? Do you want to automatically assign it to all your math sections? Or in this screenshot, all the English 2nd grade because it's a language arts test. Now, you may not necessarily want to assign it to all the math sections. So if you do not want to assign it to all the sections you teach, then you can edit the assignment and you'll select it on the checkbox. Again, it's a common step that teachers skip, but if you have forgotten to assign it, we can go in and change that assignment. So at this point, I'm going to go live on the site and I'm going to move my assessment into the scheduled stage. So I was already on the test itself, but let's also go and find a test. So I could go to the dashboard, or I could type in schedule, because that was the name of my test, and I can say I want to look in the ready stage, because I know it's in the ready stage. If you're not sure, then make sure they're all selected. So I'm going to say schedule, there's my assessment. I can click on the name right here, and now at this point, I'm going to schedule my assessment. And now I'm prompted with my start date and my end date. I'm going to start it tomorrow, and it's automatically 7 days, so maybe I'm going to give them an extra weekend to access it. And then my score due date, again, 7 days. I'm going to give them a couple more days as well. Now, all of these, again, are options. Do you not want the students to access test results until after this end date if they have access to it? And now let's talk about the online test options. Here's my test passcode. So if I want to call it Math 7 Al, I can. If this passcode is used by someone else in the district, once you go to save it, it will tell you that it is in use. So do you want to show student scores upon test submission, display the test, prevent the students from accessing before or after the start date? Now here's that enforced test time. I can say that I want students to access it from 9 to 10 a.m. on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, because that's the time I teach this Math 7 period. Do I want it timed? Do I want to track and display student results? Scrambling? Allow only assigned students to take the test? Again, you can select or deselect any of these options. Now here is that assignment piece. So at this point, because I'm a 7th grade math teacher in my school and my test is for 7th grade math, I'm just going to accept the quick assignment because I'm going to have all of my students in every math section take that assessment. Now, as I clicked on that, look what happened. It said the passcode is already in use, so it didn't save my page. So I'm going to have to say Math 7B, and let's see if that works. And now I'm going to accept my quick assignment. And it looks like I didn't get the message anymore. And now it is assigned to 5 courses in one school. Because I accepted my quick assignment, I'm going to choose Save, or I could actually view my assessment summary. And now it shows me all of the courses. If I want to edit, I could feasibly go in and edit my course assignment. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom, and I'm going to say Edit Assignment. And I can see that these are my 5 sections, but I'm not going to have my pre-AP section take it, so I'm going to remove Selected. Then I'm going to view my summary again, return to my test settings, and then the last step I need to do is save it. Now, since I've scheduled this assessment for today, to start tomorrow, it's going to be in the scheduled stage. When I realize that I selected the incorrect date, then I can go ahead and make changes to the schedule. Remember, I told you there's going to be some additional properties that appear? Well, when I go to my schedule information, it's going to show me what the properties are. I can then go in and edit my schedule settings. I'm going to change the start date back to today. And if I wanted to, I can edit my assignment as well. But I'm going to go ahead and save. I could also, as we talked about, enforcing the test time, I could change the date and not enforce it at all. So if you want to only have it available to students during their class period, you could easily go in and change the schedule settings. So now you can see my test has moved from a scheduled to an in progress because the test starts today. And now, at this point, you just administer your test, and once the end date hits, or 85% of your students have completed the assessment, it will go into the completed stage. So at this time, you're welcome to pause the recording and practice scheduling your own tests. You can always go back and edit the properties. And when you're ready to move on, you can go ahead and return to this recording to continue. Now that our test is scheduled or in progress, let's review some of the actions. As you can see, I have a variety of new things. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint and from a high level, talk about administering and scoring the assessment, and then we'll do it live. So you can administer an assessment via online, which is what we went through with all those settings. You could do it on paper. You also have the ability to bulk upload results. And when I show you where the PD resources are, you can search for how to do that as well. So as I mentioned, now that we've moved our test into the scheduled or in progress stage, our actions are going to change. So we'll have the ability to print answer sheets, print usernames. We can enable or disable printing at any point if we like. Now, once the students start taking the assessment, then we can go in and monitor how the students are progressing. So you'll be able to access this from a couple locations, but you'll get a color-coded chart where you can see how the students are progressing. The little monitor icon tells you that the students are still taking the assessment. And then if you see a pencil and a score, this will also tell you that the student has submitted their assessment. And if you have any open response items, which are in blue on this Proctor dashboard, you can then go in and actually edit or score their open response. You can scan in your results. If a student has an open response and they wrote on the answer sheet, it will show up what the student's response is. And as I mentioned, you can upload files as well, and there's a quick reference card that walks us through that. We score the test from the item details, and there's a variety of ways in which you can score an open response. You'll have to locate your section for the test that we're scoring. And then when you select that section, you're going to be, so you have the ability to individually score a student's open response, or you can score all the students' open responses, which makes it a lot faster. So you'd access your section, and then you would either view individual student tests or click on the Open Response Item tab. And then you'll view all students, and then you can switch to the next item here. So the last thing thing that you can do is monitor completion rate. This allows you to monitor the progress of scanning, or even if you're doing a common assessment and want to see other teacher sections actually completing, you can track your completion rate. Any test that has this little kind of icon next to it means that it is in progress and you've started a collection of results. So you'll be able to click on this icon and then see which of your sections or sections have started to complete the assessment. So now I'm going to go live on the demo site, and I'm going to show you how to access the Proctor dashboard, how to score your open responses, and how to track completion rate. And I'm going to show you more than one way to access the Proctor dashboard. So I'm going to go live to the site, and as I know, this assessment is in progress, so I can click on my home page. And when a test is scheduled within a day or two or is in progress, I can choose the section I want to look at right from the My SchoolNet homepage, and I can click on the Upcoming Test tab. What I'll see there is I'll be able to see my test name, the test passcode, and the stage it's in. This icon right here is what's going to show me how the students are progressing. Now, since I just scheduled it, the students obviously won't have any progress. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my home page, choose a different assessment so I can see whether there are any results in there. I'll click on the home page. I'll click on the Proctor dashboard. And now I can see that I have 3 students have submitted their assessment. I can click on the pencil to go ahead and open the open response item, or I can click on Actions right here, and I can actually generate my usernames and passwords, which is really what I need to do first before I've actually started scoring. So if I'm scanning, I'm going to generate the answer sheets, or if I'm having the students log in, I can just click on usernames and passwords. So what you're going to see here is a nice kind of printout of what the student's username is, and if the password, and for Dallas, I believe the passwords do not disappear. You'll be able to access that. And then I can print my username. I need to allow my pop-up. And now you'll see that it turns into a nice printable screen that I can cut strips for the students and hand it out so the students will know what their username is. Be aware that the students' usernames and passwords are the same for any assessment or any section that they take a test in. The only thing that would change is this online passcode. So I'm going to X this out. And now I'm going to go back to previous page and go to my actions here. And at this point, if I'm scanning, I can select answer sheets here. And now what it's going to show me is how many students do I want to generate the answer sheet for. And I default to them all selected, and I can say generate answer sheet. And what happens is my file will be created, and then I'll know when it's ready when this icon turns red, which it already has. And it'll say how many items I have available for me to access. And then I can click on this, and I can go ahead and download it now. And then I can go ahead and open the document, and it's going to give me my student answer sheets that they're going to answer on, and then I'll go in and scan it. Be aware that when you're generating answer sheets, they all sort of default to this name. So you may want to rename the file as you are downloading it. So again, if you're generating answer sheets, you'll get a notification up here when that sheet is ready to print. If you have a student that walks into your section and doesn't have an answer sheet generated, you can generate a blank answer sheet and they can put in their student ID into the space. So as I showed you, I have the ability to go into the Proctor dashboard from my home page and access usernames, passwords, and answer sheets. Let me show you a couple of other ways that I can do this. I can view the details of the test, which at any point, if I'm going to see a test name in blue, I can click on it, and from the test action areas, I can generate an answer sheet and view the usernames, and I can go to my Proctor dashboard as well. I can also click on Find a Test, choose all my stages if I like. Get rid of this. And for any of these, I can click on the test names, as I mentioned, and then I can get the answer sheets, the usernames, go to the Proctor dashboard. So there's multiple ways to access how to administer your tests from My SchoolNet or from Assessment Admin. So one of the questions that normally comes up at this point is, what if I realize after I've scheduled my tests, but before I printed my answer sheets or usernames, I find something that I need to change, but I can no longer edit. What can I do? At this point, this is the best time to use copy. If you are using a test year after year, you can copy the test at any point, but if you see you have to make some edits, you have to copy the test, but then you're going to have to go through the stages again. So you want to be 100% sure before you schedule your test that everything is okay, because once you've generated your usernames and your test passcode or even printed scan sheets, they're going to be set for this particular test ID. You'll just want to make sure that everything is correct before you click on Save for Scheduled. So at this time, I'm going to have you pause the recording to explore through the actions and properties of the test. Since it's just a practice test, you can always go back and edit the properties, and then return to the recording when you're ready to continue. And then I'm going to show you how to actually score the assessment and monitor results. So now let's go back to the Proctor dashboard to see how our students are progressing. So when I click on my home page or My SchoolNet and I click on my upcoming tests, I want to score this assessment. So I can easily click on the Proctor dashboard. I talked briefly earlier about what I see here, but at this point I want to score my assessment. So I can click individually on the pencil and I can score Melanie's test right here, and I can see her response for the open response, and then I can type in what her score would be. And then I'd have to go in and save this. Now, what I basically did was I had to pick one student at a time, and imagine if I had 30 students in my class, that would take a lot of time to score. So what we're going to do is actually score all the open responses by going into the test detail. And from here, I can choose Score Test. I have to locate my section, or if it's just an individual student, I could do that. And then when I click on the section itself, I click on my Open Response Item tab. And now from here, I'm able to see any student that has an open response answer, and depending on how many items, they'll build a list here. So I can then give the student score out of a total score that's listed. So as I start looking through and seeing what the students replied, then I can go to the bottom and score it. And then I can go to my next item and score the students' open responses here. So this makes it a lot faster because I'm doing all the students at the same time and I get to see what their response is. If I forget what the question is, I can expand the question. If there's a rubric attached to it or supporting material to this item, it would show up here as well. So once I've scored all the students per item, I'll just say score. So it's a matter of doing it individually by student or doing it by all the students in the section, and I think this way is a lot faster. So let's monitor the collection of results. When I hover over Assessment Admin, this bottom option here is called Track Completion Rate. From here, I have the ability to view any test that is being administered. So I can click on the little icon here that allows me to view my data collection report. And then I can see the sections that are assigned this test, how many students were eligible for testing, how many have I collected thus far, and the percentage collected and the status. When I click on the actual section, I can see which of my students have actually submitted their test, and I can even go into their test and view what their responses are. So it's a great way to track, again, your completion rate on how many students overall have completed the assessment. Now, we of course could go in, let me click on the test detail. We could of course go in and look at the Proctor dashboard here, and this will give me the color coding so I'll know here as well. But the track completion rate is a great way if you don't need to get into the detail of the student. So that is pretty much it for scheduling and administering the test. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint and real briefly talk about what you're going to see in the Part 3 webinar. This is where we're going to get the results for teachers. We're going to walk you through how to access classroom results. I'm going to go live on the site as well and show you where you can find the PD resources. So from the home page, you'll have a link right here to the resource library, which will take you to all the searching, as we say, of PD planners. You can hover over Educator Development and click on PD Search, or click on it from the home page and search for, let's say, Assessment Admin, and you'll see a lot of different resources. And what these will take you to is an actual PDF or a quick reference card that you can view to help you with step-by-step of how to do everything I've shown in these last 2 webinars. We also will be housing all of these recorded webinars as well there. So again, you can do Educator Development, PD Search, or just click on this resource library. If you need help on understanding how to access the PD Planner resources, there's also a quick reference card on how to access that as well. So I want to thank you all for your time, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in another webinar. Just keep in mind, to be successful in the next webinar, you'll want to try to administer a test or locate a test that has been administered, because we're going to focus solely on how to get results and support instruction. So again, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you again.